I wonder who would care. If they did, would they cry? How many of them would wonder which scar they gave me if my insides showed on my face? How many of them would care to know that though I smiled every day I died a little bit inside? That I cried myself to sleep so many nights? That when I lost my babies, I had no one I could turn to? That when I lost my mind there was no one there to bring me back to reality? Would anyone care that I tried my best to stay alive, but the pain was too much to bear? Should I leave a note? Would they even read it? If they did, surely, they would all say I am weak-minded. They would say how stupid I was for allowing myself to be so hurt that I would end it all, because I couldn't handle it. No one understands me, Arthur. They don't get it. To them I am nothing more than a common tramp. Dirty, dingy, uneducated, pathetic. I am useless here on earth. Please just know I loved you. You weren't just my little brother, but you were also my best friend. The bond we had can never be broken by anyone. I love you. Forgive me. Angela. She dug the knife deep into the pit of her stomach, and did not scream. She lay upon the pink and white ruffles on her canopy bed. The same one from when she was 12 years old. As she looked up at the ceiling, she had flashes of memory, good and bad. She felt herself slipping away, and 3 teardrops fell on her pillow, as she took her final breath. The next day police came to Angela's childhood home. They found her lifeless body. Her still pink, but pale cheeks exposing the white residue left on her cheek from the sting of her salted tears. Next to her body they found her letter to Arthur. As Arthur read her words aloud, he could barely keep his composure. He slid down the wall in the upstairs hallway. He started to sob heavily. He let out a loud scream showing the pain of his loss. That was when I met him. He was only 16. I was 19. It was supposed to be the end of my 18-hour shift at the sheriff's department, but life doesn't stop just because you are ready for bed. I had the task of holding Arthur to comfort him for a while. In the 4 hours we had to wait at the precinct for Child Protective Services to arrive to take Arthur to a temporary home, we got to know each other very well. He spoke fondly of his older sister, and told me of his struggles. With tears in his eyes, he began to smile. He said most people wouldn't understand the bond that him and his sister shared. Life was far from easy, but they had each other. If they weren't alone, they could get through anything. He lay his head upon my shoulder, then he closed his eyes. He was only able to get 10 minutes of rest before he woke up and started to cry again. At this point, I went to grab him a pop out of the vending machine in the hallway. This damn thing never seemed to work and always took my dollar. I wasn't expecting this time to be any different. To my sheer happiness, it worked. I put in my 3 quarters, and it popped out a can of Pepsi. Next to the soda machine was a box of snacks next to a bowl of fruit. I grabbed him and myself a sandwich, and a bag of Lay's potato chips. It was the least I could do. I was somehow responsible for this little gentle creature that lost everything he ever loved. Officer Pamela Vega, we heard from the entrance. I waved her over. That's me, I said. She smiled and reached out to shake my hand. I'm Erica Thompson with Child Protective Services here in Boston. It's a pleasure to meet you. I so didn't want to, but I shook her hand. We walked back in the room. Arthur, hi. I'm Erica. You're going to come with me for tonight, okay? Whimpering and looking at me with those sad eyes, Arthur replied okay. As they began to walk outside, Arthur looked back at me. I could see he had something on his mind. I asked him while putting him in the back seat of Erica's Cadillac if he was okay, and he just shook his head. Merry Christmas, Ms. Vega, he said softly. Good night, sweet child. Merry Christmas to you too, I replied. They drove away and I began to cry. It was hard to believe that in just a few hours it went from being Christmas Eve to Christmas Day, and I still hadn't been to bed in over 2 days. I was so exhausted that I almost fell walking to my white Ford Escape. I somehow managed to get in my car. I turned the engine over, turned on the heat, and turned on the radio revealing the crappy weather report. Another snowstorm heading our way. Big shocker there. As I was waiting for my car to warm up and blowing on my fingers, my phone rang. It was Dustin. The third call in a row. I let it go to voicemail again. I was about to see him at home, and didn't feel like hearing his drama. I threw my phone in the back seat of my car, and turned up the radio. I listened to Please Come Home for Christmas by Charles Brown on my way home. As I passed over the Tobin Bridge, there was a man standing on the ledge. He jumped before I could stop the car. When I pulled off, I called 911. This is Officer Pamela Vega. Badge number 22612. I have just passed the Tobin Bridge. A man has seemingly jumped. I got a radio response of an officer in the area. Girl, what are you still doing out? Go home. I heard from Jenny from dispatch. I responded, that's where I'm going now, girl. I'm gonna put my feet up and have a glass of ice-cold soda. We both laughed and said good night. When I arrived at my apartment at 322 West 4th Street, apartment 10, I had a weird feeling come over me. I didn't want to be there. I sure didn't want to see Dustin. I was too young for this big life I had. I thought by now I would have somehow advanced in my career. I didn't want to work as an officer forever. It wasn't my passion. Helping children like Arthur, now that was my passion. I put the key in the door and turned the knob to the right, while sighing deeply. I had wondered, is this all my life will be? When I opened the door, it was dark inside. There were no lights on except a flashing blue light from my coffee maker on the tiny kitchen counter. I stood at the edge of the island for a moment, then kicked off my slip-on high heels. I unbuttoned my raincoat and threw it across the room, hitting the arm of the couch. I looked around. Still, with no lights on, I started to walk about the apartment. I again had a funny feeling, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was because I was used to Dustin being in the living room every time I got home from work. I mean, I didn't want to hear his big mouth, but I was kinda used to it. I wondered where he was. Everything seemed okay, so I turned on the lights and poured myself a glass of soda. I walked over and sat on the couch and turned on the television. I turned on the news and opened my laptop. I was very sleepy, but I couldn't go to bed without looking at my social media page. Once the news was finished, I drew myself a warm bath. I had a box of bath salt balls sitting in the towel closet, so I grabbed one. I threw the fizzy ball into the water and took a deep breath in. It smelled so good, like a dozen rose petals were smashed into a ball. I guess Dustin wasn't all bad, LOL. He did know what I liked. I hadn't realized it, but when I got into the tub there was a little blue egg at the bottom. Of course, I stepped on it, LOL. That was just my luck though. I have always been a bit of a klutz. I reached down and picked up the egg and placed it in the crack of the tub where the sliding doors used to be. I sat down slowly since the bath water was still very hot. I don't know why, but ever since I was a child, I have loved super hot baths, ones where no one else could stand to touch. I called out to my trusty servant Alexa, "Please play my bath time relaxation playlist." She replied okay, and my songs began to play, starting with a song that reminded me of Arthur. I sank into the tub as I sighed. Upon sitting back up, I reached over to the left side of the bathtub and picked up the little egg. I could tell from the weight of the egg that there was something in it. I decided to open it. To my surprise, there was a gold and ruby ring inside. Oddly enough, it was a size 6. When I slid it on my ring finger, it fit perfectly like a shoe. For the next several minutes, my mind began to wander as I stared deeply into the center of the ring on my finger. I began having flashbacks of when Dustin and I first met. I snapped out of it, so to speak, and reached for the light blue-green towel. Gah. Always so cold in this place, I said to myself aloud. I stepped out of the tub and wrapped myself in the towel. I grabbed another out of the hallway closet to wrap my long wet hair in. I reached down to dry my feet and almost fell over. I was in a weird angle, I suppose. I decided to sit on the lid of my toilet to finish drying my toes. I hated feeling the cold floor with still wet feet. It made me feel slimy. I slid my pink slippers on and walked into the bedroom. Before I knew it, my eyes were closed. I didn't even have enough energy to put on my pretty white and pink pajamas that were sitting at the foot of my bed. The next thing I remember was my cell phone ringing with an annoying ringtone. It was associated with Dustin's contact phone number. I had set a separate ringtone for my mother and sister as well. I looked at the phone with blurry crossed eyes and put it down without answering it. I figured if it was important, he would leave a message or just call back. I didn't worry about it. In my mind, if he called me, I knew he was okay. I knew I didn't need to send the cavalry out looking for him. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of knocking and yelling. I rolled over, rubbed my eyes and yawned big. I sat up and turned my body and hung off the right side of the bed for a few seconds, then yawned again. I had one slipper on my foot. The other was sitting on the hardwood floor. I was very irritated. It was my day off. Who was this clown who disturbed my sleep? Why was he yelling? All I could think was he was lucking my pistol was in the safe. I walked into the living room to see that stupid light flashing on my coffee maker. I was angered to see that Dustin still hadn't been home. He had better have a damn good excuse, I thought to myself. Again, I heard yelling and knocking. It was coming from someone standing in front of the door across the hall from my apartment. Angela, you answer this damn door right now. Angela, if you don't answer this door, I am going to break it down, said the irate man. I swung the door open and yelled, "Can I help you, sir?" He responded, "Yeah, mind your own damn business. That's how you can help me." I just laughed and closed my door.